By 1878, he had at least 20 teams and wagons following the old Indian Trail. There were 4 stops on the trail. The nearest of them was along Stony Brook, a tributary of the James near Arrowwood Lake. It was run by Limpy Clayton, one of the more colorful rascals that ever called Jamestown home. He maintained 2 dugouts on the dirt ranch, one for horses and the other for the freight driver and stagecoach passengers that needed to overnight on the trail. Please welcome Mr. Keith Norman as Limpy Clayton.
Well, thank y'all. I gotta admit that Limpy Jack, or Jack Clayton, is not the name that my mama knew me by. I don't generally tell this story, but y'all look like an honest bunch, with the exception of this guy here with the funny music box in his pocket. I was born John Hamilton, Schenectady, New York. I served as a cavalryman in the Union side of the war between the states, honorably. After that, traveled a bit, even saw China before I headed to the American West. First stop was, well, something a lot of people don't consider the far west. I stopped at Duluth, and me and some partners had a little horse trading business. And occasionally we had a little trouble with the title of some of our horses, and some of the people wanted them back. Ended up being some arrests, and I testified against one of my business partners, and he shot me. That's how I got this limp, and that's how I decided to change my name and move a little farther west. Horses were the only thing I knew, so I was a stagecoach driver in the Red River Valley, along the Red between Fort Abercrombie and Pembina, 1872. I got in a little trouble there too. I was driving a stagecoach, a 4-up, big Concord, nice looking team. I always had good horses. And all of a sudden I smelled smoke. There's a prairie fire coming across at us. It was kind of behind us, so I knew I couldn't turn around. I had to outrun it. So I whipped up that team and I yelled words of encouragement that are not found in the Bible. We got around it. We were safe. Not a hair was scorched on the horses or those ladies in the coach. And they went and complained to my boss, and they said that my language was hotter than the prairie fire. Made a vow right then and there that I was never going to let that happen again. I never drove a stagecoach that had just women passengers ever again. Thought I'd try my opportunities just a little bit farther west, too. Heard about this booming town along the James River and the Fort Seward and the Fort Totten Trail, and thought maybe I could try my hand at one of those saloons that they had there going in Jamestown. You know, they got laws about saloons. You have to have a territorial license. I got arrested for that. Who would think? Then they didn't like what I was charging for my liquor in my saloon. After that, it seemed I was charging for the Indians that would come in. I was charging in horses, and that was against the law too. They rounded up a whole bunch of us. They had to catch us first. We hid out in McKechnie's cabin south down along the river, but they finally caught us all. Loaded us up, and we're hauling us to Fargo to face the federal judge. We kind of come through that. None of us got any prison time except for the one boy. He had a little knife with him. He pulled that and he stabbed the marshal. They got a law against that too, you know. He did a year in the federal pen. The rest of us got free. I came back and ran the dirt ranch. That's what I called my little place along the Fort Totten Trail. I just kind of plotted out where the first night's stop would be if you were headed north from Fort Seward to Fort Totten. Made a couple of dugouts there for me and horses and travelers and other people. Sold some supplies, probably sold a lot more whiskey. Need to put an end to a bad rumor that's going around that there were people that were that left the dirt ranch after being cheated at cards. And I need to state emphatically that nobody lived to leave the dirt ranch after they'd been cheated at cards. So that is patently untrue. Over the years, I probably got a little more fondness of the bottle than was good for me. New Year's Eve, 1878, we were traveling along, cold night. I was riding on the back of the wagon. We were headed up the trail. Sure enough, I fell off the wagon, quite literally. People I was with were too drunk to notice I was gone. I was too drunk to care if I was gone. Laid there on the trail till the next morning when Pat Moran picked me up and hauled me to my cabin. I told him I'd be all right. I had some medicine in there, you know. But as, whiskey just doesn't cure everything like it should. And over the course of a few days, I ended up with gangrene of my hand and my foot. Major Croft, the surgeon from Fort Totten, he was one of the people that stopped at the dirt ranch every once in a while. As luck would have it, as I was laying there with my fingers and toes turning green and smelly, he came along and hauled me up to the hospital they had up there at Fort Totten. They amputated a couple of my fingers and some toes, and I recovered. And about that time, the town of Jamestown got its first newspaper, the Jamestown Alert. They had articles about my recovery up at the hospital at Fort Totten. So I guess I was the first celebrity of this area. Over the years, kidney disease kind of laid me low, and I ended up passing away. But one of my prized possessions was always the flag, that last flag that flew over Fort Totten. I was given that by Captain Patterson. He's kind of a drinking buddy of mine. We both like to reminisce about the Civil War. And Sheriff McKechnie, he supposedly wrapped me in that flag, and they laid me to rest. And that was my life here in Jamestown.
Thank you very much, Keith.